Decoding Learning Differences with Kimberlyn Lavelle, and this episode is Meeting Sensory Needs with Jonathan Treiber. Jonathan Treiber is Chief Executive Officer of Skil-Care, a 40-plus year U.S.-based manufacturer of patient safety, mobility, and rehabilitation products, serving hospitals, nursing homes, rehabilitation facilities, home care, and education settings worldwide. He brings more than 20 years of experience building and leading companies focused on adoption, operational execution, and commercialization. And today we will be talking about how the products of Skil-Care impact education and can be used in an educational environment or in the home for our different learners. And we will get into a lot more than just the products that they have. Enjoy. Good morning. Welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got into what you are doing now?
Sure. So great to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Jonathan Treiber, and I run a manufacturing company in New York. The backstory for me, I guess briefly, was I came into this business 3 years ago. Prior to that, I ran a marketing software startup that I created with two other individuals and had a wonderful, kind of tech entrepreneur journey over 15 years. And one of the most memorable parts of that were the clients we got to work with. And that's the tie-in to where, what I'm doing now. Those clients were some of the biggest consumer brands in the world, brands that almost everybody knows as Unilever and Procter and Gamble, and the brands they own, Kimberly-Clark, Clorox, etc. And I felt really lucky that I got a front row seat to how they do what they do in terms of brand building and marketing and promotion to build these amazing brands. And so we were fortunate enough to sell the business in 2022, and it gave me an opportunity to think about what I wanted to do next. And Skil-Care is a family-owned business. In fact, my father-in-law started the business almost 50 years ago. And my wife, who's an only child, I think didn't have a ton of interest in coming into the business, but I did. And I really felt like I wanted a brand new learning curve. And I got it. Our business fundamentally is in the health and wellness space. We manufacture products that are more core, let's call it medical devices for nursing homes, hospitals, home health care. And my father-in-law, working with some special education teachers decades ago, set on a path to develop what we call a sensory category of products that really focus on young learners with neurodivergent situations. And so what I would share is I've been here 3 years. I got thrown into that world of manufacturing, which I knew nothing about, the world of healthcare and special education, which I knew, I would say, very little about, but I had anecdotal and personal experience with that, with aging grandparents and kids and friends who have kids with autism and ADHD. And so for me, the real reward is to be in a business that not only is family owned and we produce our products here in New York, a suburb of Westchester County, and it helps people, right? These products help young learners maximize their abilities in the classroom. It helps teachers deliver more effective lesson plans to this special student population. And also it caters to parents who of course are, this is all consuming for parents with kids with these types of educational needs. And then of course the geriatric population that we cater to with safety and comfort products for use in the home or nursing home. So for us, there is a thread that connects all this, and for me, it's very meaningful work. Being able to help people with the products we make, understand their situation, their conditions, and empathize, in terms of how our products get used, why they're needed. That really fuels us from a product development standpoint and day to day, why we do what we do.
Okay. So, what are some of the products, like what are the products that are helping these different learners and these kids?
So largely we think of them all within the sensory stimulation bucket. And some of these have benefits, for instance, in reducing agitation. Some things that we've developed now for decades are weighted gel lap pads of various weights for different sized kids, and therapists and special education teachers will often identify kids in the class that may have ADHD or trouble sitting. And much like the therapeutic benefits of a weighted blanket, which do exist in a classroom, what we found is it's much easier for teachers to offer a student, a vinyl, a glittered, a colorful weighted lap pad that can reduce agitation. So that is one example. There are other sensory gel items that we make that are more tactile and meant to be played with, whether it's to de-stress individuals or reduce anxiety. Those gel items can be used either in conjunction with a lesson plan. Some of these are actually learning aids. For example, there are um, gel items we make that actually have alphabets and numbers for very young learners uh, to learn certain subject material, spelling certain letters through the gel with beads and other things. So some of the products have really just sensory regulation use. Others have a combined educational sensory use for integration into lesson plans. And then, sort of a bit surprising to us, this is about 20, 25 years ago, is a product called the Crash Pad, which is like a big nylon bag filled with foam. I
Hmm.
don't think my father-in-law, who designed this product working with teachers, I don't think he ever thought it'd be our best-selling product across everything we do, but it is. And so, what we have learned in working with educators, and of course asking them about their use of the product and stories, they have found ways to integrate it into either sensory rooms that exist independent of the classroom in schools, or sensory corners and other things within classrooms as a sort of very quick reward for students who are able to focus for obviously a period of time, which isn't usually very long, but to complete a task, writing a couple sentences, doing a few math problems, and then going and jumping on the crash pad. So it's like a mobile foam pit that kids, again, of a certain age and size in elementary school, get to go dive into the crash pad, and then they come back to the desk ready, recharged to take on the next assignment. And so for us, there's obviously physical activity benefits to this, and trying to figure out how to cater to learners that have a difficulty focusing for long periods of time and may have sensory overload, which again, there's so much out there. We're pretty niche, we're pretty specialized. We don't deal, for example, with auditory a sensory overload, which is a whole different dimension for kids with autism. And so from our perspective, it's very physical, it's very tactile. And whether it's about helping people self-regulate, at a desk to concentrate, or whether it's something that exists in a sensory corner that's either fun as a gel sensory item, or the crash pad, which is a fan favorite, those are the types of products that we offer.
Okay. Um, So you said you guys don't offer auditory. Is there any like, or what about like visual overstimulation or anything like that? Or is it's just the physical sensory needs that you're providing for?
I would say it's the overwhelming majority is physical sensory.
Okay. Um, so sorry, I'm trying to, there's several different directions. I'm trying to like get my brain. I've seen those crash pads in action, and I know that those are very fun for kids that need that. Like, and it's both, right? Like it feels rewarding for them. It feels like something exciting, but it's also something their body is needing um,
Hmm.
to help them regulate. Um, okay, so are there common themes that you're hearing around how sensory factors affect day-to-day comfort?
I mean, the short answer is yes. I think that there are so many nuances to that question that depend on the learner, the specific individual, the student, as well as the teacher and the classroom environment, the way the classroom environment is set up. Um, what would be the best angle to answer that question?
Um, yeah, I guess that maybe the way that the classroom environment is set up, um, what are things that might be impacting the learners in the way a classroom environment is set up?
Sure. So while this isn't core to our business, obviously, contextually, it's important for us because our products exist in this environment. There are differing levels of attention and planning that teachers and schools will do to create, let's call it optimal environments. And I think there are classrooms that exist along this spectrum, from those that are really not great to those that are, I would say, much closer to, it's not really the gold standard because the goal of sensory rooms is not for education, it's for regulation. But with the uptick in trend of sensory rooms within a school environment, within an airport environment, a shopping mall, right? Those are purpose built, very purposeful in terms of the design and the flow and what they're trying to accomplish. I have not seen a single educational classroom that mimics that environment as focusing on the environment first and then integrating the education element to it. We all know that the schools were that exist, these are classrooms that have been there and buildings that have been there for 50 years, and so a lot of it is about retrofitting a pretty stark, very bright light classroom with no AC in the summer to figure out, okay, how do we jerry rig this thing that can be a friendly environment for kids with sensory needs. And so with that, most classrooms, whether the educator has a say in it or they always have some personal things they can do, and it's unbelievable how committed these teachers are, spending their own money, on various things for the classroom um, to make it more sensory friendly. The everything what I have seen work well as a happy medium is classrooms that are organized in a way that create learning stations as well as for individualized learning or very small group learning, as well as I mentioned the term sensory corner, where there is a safe place where there's either a crash pad or a sensory swing or the sort of expanded version of a reading nook where kids can go, not in unstructured ways, but how that is incorporated into lesson plans to be able to maximize retention and be able to create what some people call bite-sized learning, where lengthy lesson plans just don't work. I mean, I think for a lot of people it doesn't work, even mainstream students. But for this population, figuring out what is too much, where retention starts to go downhill, and behavioral issues start to pop up. It's a very individual sort of question and answer. But having a room that's organized not only like this structurally, can be very beneficial. Most of these teachers do have either assistant teachers or paras in the room, so they're not often the only teacher in the room. And so you have an extra set of hands that can help facilitate movement of these kids from, sort of an educational lesson plan to a nice temporary distraction and back to the lesson plan. The other thing that hasn't been done nearly as much is thinking in the environment, not just how to lay out the room, but everything from the paint color to the lighting, which again, we're talking about facilities that are often, they never have enough money, and budgets for lighting and different lighting for a special education classroom versus a mainstream classroom. It just doesn't happen as often as the experts, and I'm not an expert, I just observe what I observe. It doesn't happen nearly as often as it should, um, to create, truly a unique space that caters in the ways I think you alluded to. It's not just physical, it's auditory, it's visual. And what I find is that the physical is often the easiest for the educator to achieve, or the administration in the school to achieve. The visual becomes like, who's going to paint the classroom? Is it the teacher with a bunch of friends before the school year starts? Is it, are they going to put wall decals on? There are all these stickers for cartoons or for other things, and like maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. And often the teacher's paying for that out of her own pocket. And then, of course, on the auditory side, I'd argue maybe that's well, visual also is lighting, right? Lighting is fluorescent lighting is generally awful for this student population. And I just have not seen a whole lot of innovation in that realm for a classroom, based on the student's needs. And then maybe the one that is furthest on the wish list still is auditory, where school hallways are loud, school classrooms are loud. The idea of soundproofing and other things, which again sound good in theory, but cost money and take a ton of time. And who's going to do it and how's it going to get funded, becomes, I think, a bit elusive. So it's like I said, most classrooms and educators will say that their class is somewhere in the middle of the spectrum to kind of left of center, in that realm of like, there's some stuff that they've been able to do. There's some stuff they feel like they really should and need to do, but that has been harder to tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me remember back. I had a colleague that was a special education classroom teacher, self-contained classroom, and before her very first year, before the school year started, she painted. It was a 40-year-old school, and it was one of those things where like just do whatever you want and then ask for forgiveness later. So she painted all the walls black. She wouldn't, and then she put in lamps all over the room. She had a little fish tank that had like a watery sound. She would have soft music playing. So you would walk into this room. Oh, and there was like a couch and stuff. And then there was another room that was attached that was kind of more storage, but she had like tucked out a space that was like the sensory calm down corner. And like you walked into that room, and every person who walked into that room felt instantly more relaxed, instantly calmer. With, the bright lights were never on. It was always soft lighting and soft noise, and it exuded calm. And the year before she
That's
got,
incredible.
yeah, the year before she got there, that same group of students had had so many behavior issues. And then she arrived, became their teacher, and she never had any behavior issues. It was it was a complete turnaround. And it was such a powerful testament to the need to be able to take those things into consideration. But yeah, it was all her own time, her own money. She was the one providing every aspect of all of that.
So those are, I refer to them as the 1%,
Yeah.
right? That's the 1% example. It exists. These people are saints. It's not systemized,
Right.
or it, it hasn't been embraced. While there's so much talk about it and success stories, it hasn't been integrated into the system of education the way that most people feel like it really should be, right? And should have been. How many years ago was this that you're talking about this teacher?
It was at least, man, it was probably 15 years ago. I was gonna say it was at least 10, but yeah, it has to have been more than that.
Like more than 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And the need has only grown, the awareness has only grown, the results and data have only grown to support what felt 15 years ago probably as like, this person's a little crazy to do this, but it makes sense. Hey, if she wants to do it, let her do it.
Yeah.
And it's sad
Yeah.
that that happened 15 years ago, and you don't have a classroom like that in every K through 5 school in the country.
Yeah.
Like, that's sad. And look, schools have budget constraints, but the fact that schools prioritize, for example, athletic programs where people donate money, they go get private funding, right? There's private funding out there. Schools get a lot of grants, and that's often what comes to buy our product. But to think about, like, well, why aren't there more grants for this? Which visually, as you said, it's an instant experience that people have
Yeah.
walking into a classroom being like, and I'm like, I mean, I'm not normal, but I don't have the extreme sensory regulation issues that these kids have, and I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
Wow. So, in a way, it's kind of depressing that we
Yeah.
talk about it and there's so much talk, but the impact that could be had if every school had a teacher like that, or every school had a classroom like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
it would be nice if it wasn't on the teacher to provide it. And
100%. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I mean
And
is
she
that,
did
like,
write
that.
some grants to get, I remember she wrote grants to get seating. She wanted a variety of seating. She just wanted
Yep.
a variety of seating options,
Yeah,
and
but it
she
was
did
on
write some
her.
grants to get that.
But it was on her to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, a teacher making whatever that teacher made would have to spend 2 years take home pay to do what she did to the room. So, guaranteed she'd need outside funding. But the fact that the grant writing also fell on her,
Yeah.
and that the school and the education system, even in the state, didn't institutionalize this,
Right.
right? You could think of what an impact this could make if, as you just said it, the teacher didn't have to do all this herself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just figuring out how to write a grant, who to write a grant to, like that whole process alone felt overwhelming to me when she was talking to me about it. I'm like, I don't know anything about it. So I'd have to start there and then like how many hours is going into just trying to get the money so that you're not paying out of pocket for the thing that your students need, but you won't get unless you do all this extra work. So yeah, it's a lot. Yes, systemic change is definitely needed. Um, just to sort of pivot, so we've been talking about schools and classrooms. I want to kind of focus a little bit on home and parents. And I was just thinking about the parents that have kids. Maybe there isn't, maybe there is or isn't an official diagnosis of anything. How do they know if they might need the types of products that you guys have?
I think the easiest answer I can give you is that most of these parents um, are in communication with their kids' teachers, probably at a level that your mainstream classroom student, their parents are not in touch with their kids' classroom teacher. And so, what we have found, again, anecdotally, is that often the way that this works is the school or the teacher, really, the teacher somehow finds our product and says, yes, that'll help support me in the classroom. They either buy it with grant money, buy it themselves, or they go to the school and they say, hey, you have some discretionary spend. I mean, our products aren't that expensive. So, 100 bucks, 200 bucks, whatever. So then that gets implemented in the classroom, and the kids, where it has a benefit in the communication with the parents, the teacher will say, hey, either this is something, Johnny's doing really well. The mom or the dad are always looking for products to bring into the home to support, their kid, um, outside of the classroom. And often it's, hey, what's working in the classroom? And hey, this crash pad, he really loves it. And all of a sudden that person will buy a crash pad, right? And the benefit of, kind of we have distribution everywhere. We're on Amazon, where, so our products really can be found uh everywhere. That ability to, for the parent, in a way, to make it easy for them, where they're not the guinea pig. Really, the teacher's the guinea pig, saying, hey, I think this product I should introduce. They introduce it, it works, and then the parent says, yeah, I'll just, get one of those and put it in my house. And we also find, given that our products aren't, I would say, they're there's a lot of mainstream crossover too. It's clearly much more effective with the population, the folks that we're talking about. But what we will often find is that other teachers will say, hey, that product, where'd you get that? Because I have couple students in my mainstream class that could probably benefit that from that too. And so the school becomes really the authority on, we've used this, it works. And for parents to get that information from the school is really how they come to purchase it. The other way they find out is through, as I mentioned, some out of school sensory rooms, which exist in spades versus 10, 20 years ago in airports and malls and elsewhere. And so, parents are there with their kids in that environment and see, hey, so and so, they're gravitating to this over that, and kind of want to have that at home. And they, figure out, again, or they just go on Amazon and they say, oh, that's a skill care product and I can get that in 2 days. So that's how it typically happens.
So if there's any parents listening who are like, well, my kid has certain behaviors, do you know, um, and maybe you don't know, but are there any like specific behaviors that if parents see it, it might be a red flag that a particular product would benefit them?
I mean, there are a lot, but I'll give you maybe two examples just in the interest of time. The first is restless leg syndrome. Kids that sit too long, their legs start to fidget and their legs start to move. It's like an involuntary, response. And so with that comes a couple choices. The right choice is not to keep the kid in the seat, continuing to do their work, right? That's a signal that we got to change something. And whether it is let's take a break, go do whatever it is, right? Go jump on the couch, go jump on a crash pad, go, um, you get 10 minutes of free time to get uh, your energy out and regulate, and then come back and finish your work. Um, there are products that exist, for that. And then there's the weighted gel lap pads, as something and as simple as that sounds, which is, hey, I need like 7 to 10 good minutes for my kid because, I see agitation starting at like minute 3 and we can't really get anywhere with the work. And so, again, it's not either or, but that would be an example. Agitation, right? Where it's not necessarily behavioral outbursts. I mean, that will happen too. And I think that's sort of the volcano exploding, right? There are signals that lead up to, sort of tantrums and other things that many of us have experienced, which I think can be avoided and preempted. I would say that would be a clear example, right? Behavioral, physical observation of a child who is, whether their legs start, moving, they start squirming in the chair. Certainly, the facial expressions of, like, I'm done with this, I can't do any more of this problem, and loss of focus. It becomes a question of, let's distract and then bring them back to finish the task, or is there something that can be incorporated into the task? Again, physical, sensory, a gel item that can be pressed and kind of, as an outlet for the physical regulation need while the learner is completing their assignment.
Perfect. All right. I feel like we've covered kind of all our bases, giving our listeners something to think about and look into. Is there anything else that you want the listeners to know, whether they're a coming from the school side of things or a parent side of things? Is there anything else that you really want them to know, or something we haven't touched on that you want to?
I mean, the two things I try to impart to everybody is it can feel very isolating, um, and they're not alone, right? This is the good news is there's more and more visibility on this topic. And the
Mhm.
second thing I want people to know is, I want them to think of skill care as a resource, not for product necessarily, right? We try to put out, thought leadership and how tos and, things and information that can be useful in the classroom or at home, in some cases where it has nothing to do with the products that we offer. And so many parents have go-to resources, and that's great. But it's thinking about skill care as an information resource as well. We answer lots of questions about people comparing products that aren't even ours, that we're always willing to help them think through based on our experience. And we may not have all the answers, but we try to be as helpful as we possibly can, because everybody has personal anecdotes that, again, draw them to the mission that we're on. Several people here have spouses that are special education teachers. Several people here have kids who are on the autism spectrum, and have ADHD, and so it's a very personal mission. And if we can help even one parent, we love to do it.
Love it. Perfect. Okay, and I've got the website down below, but if you want to also just tell people where to find your products and information and how to reach out to you guys.
Sure. Amazon is going to be the easiest and best. Our website where our products are also available is skillcare.com, SKIL dash CARE.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on. It was a pleasure chatting with you and talking all about the environmental overwhelms and what we can do about it. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for what you do.